Look up at the night sky. If you gaze toward that faint, flickering red embers suspended in the darkness, you are looking at what humanity has been told is our inevitable destiny. For decades, we have been sold a grand cinematic vision. Cities beneath glass domes, rockets descending onto crimson dust, and a thriving second home for our civilization. It is an inspiring dream. But as a physicist who has spent a lifetime examining the fundamental laws that govern matter, energy, and space, I have to tell you an unsettling truth. Mars colonization, in the way it has been promised to you, is not just extraordinarily difficult. It is an illusion that collapses the moment it collides with the bedrock principles of physics. When we strip away the marketing, the science fiction, and the billionaire optimism, the cold mathematics of reality tell a vastly different story. We are not separated from Mars merely by tens of millions of miles. We are separated by cosmic radiation that tears through human cellular architecture, a catastrophic absence of a global magnetic shield, and a thermodynamic trap that makes surviving on the ocean floor look effortless by comparison. Before we dismantle this grand illusion and examine what the laws of physics truly say about leaving our cradle, take a moment to subscribe and join us on this journey through the deepest workings of our universe. If we want to understand our true place among the stars, we must begin with the unvarnished truth. Listen closely. The reality of the red planet hides a secret that will change how you see our cosmic future forever. Let us begin with a simple, undeniable fact. Every breath you take, every step you make outside your front door, you are taking part in a thermodynamic miracle. We walk around on the surface of this blue world, completely oblivious to the violent, very chaotic universe just above our heads. You step outside, feel a gentle breeze, and assume this is the natural state of things. It is not. The natural state of the universe is a lethal, freezing vacuum. To understand why moving to Mars is fundamentally flawed, we first have to understand the invisible fortress we currently live inside. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting in the cabin of a commercial airliner, cruising at 30,000 feet. It is freezing outside, and the air is impossibly thin, but you are comfortable. You might be drinking a cup of coffee. You are safe because the airplane is a pressurized vessel, actively fighting against the hostile environment just inches away from you. Now, scale that idea up to the size of a planet. Our Earth is the ultimate pressurized vessel, but its walls are not made of aluminum and titanium. They are made of gravity, atmospheric pressure, and something far more profound. A planetary magnetic field deep beneath your feet, about 1,800 miles down, lies the outer core of the Earth. It is a churning, very turbulent ocean of superheated molten iron and nickel. Because the Earth is spinning, this liquid metal moves in massive convection currents. And as the fundamental laws of physics tell us, moving electrical charges create magnetic fields. This immense, invisible magnetic bubble, known as the magnetosphere, extends far out into space. Why does this matter? Because our sun is not just a gentle source of light and warmth. It is a thermonuclear engine that constantly hurls a blistering storm of charged particles, known as the solar wind, out into the solar system at 1,000,000 miles per hour. When that violent wind hits the Earth, our magnetic shield deflects it. The lethal particles slide around us, harmlessly, like water flowing around a smooth river stone. Because of this shield, our atmosphere stays locked in place. Because we have a thick atmosphere, we have pressure. And because we have pressure, liquid water can exist on the surface, and life can thrive. Now, let us look at Mars. Billions of years ago, Mars might have felt very much like Earth. It had rivers, lakes, and perhaps even a blue sky. But Mars has a fatal physical flaw. It is only about half the size of Earth, and it has only 10% of our mass. Because it is so small, Mars cooled down much faster than Earth. Think of how a small, poorly insulated cabin loses its heat on a bitter winter night much faster than a massive, thick-walled stone castle. The smaller the volume, the faster the thermal energy escapes into the cold. That is exactly what happened to the core of Mars. Its interplanetary engine froze. The churning molten iron slowed down and eventually stopped. When the core died, the magnetic dynamo shut off. The invisible shield collapsed. And this is where the physics become absolutely merciless. Without a magnetic shield, Mars was completely exposed to the relentless, unending assault of the solar wind. Over millions of years, the sun literally sandblasted the Martian atmosphere away into the dark void of space. Today, the atmospheric pressure on the surface of Mars is less than 1% of what we experience at sea level on Earth. It is a near vacuum. What does that mean for a human being? Let us be very clear. If you were to step out onto the Martian surface without a pressurized spacesuit, the lack of oxygen would be the least of your immediate concerns. Because the pressure is so incredibly low, the boiling point of water drops drastically. Your body is composed mostly of water. At the temperature of your own internal body heat, the fluids in your lungs, your eyes, and your bloodstream would literally begin to vaporize. Your blood would boil. This is a physiological threshold known as the Armstrong limit. And on the surface of Mars, you are far, far below it. The foundation of the Martian colonization dream requires us to replace a planetary-scale fortress that was built by geology over billions of years with brittle habitats built by human hands. But as we pull back the next layer, we will see that simply holding the air in is just the beginning of our problems. Now, imagine that we manage to solve the pressure problem. Imagine we construct magnificent, airtight structures on the surface of the red planet. We pump in oxygen, we regulate the temperature, and we create an internal climate where a human being can comfortably breathe. At first glance, it looks like a victory. You are warm, you have air, and you can look out through a clear window at the rusted, ancient landscape stretching toward the horizon. It seems peaceful. But this is where the mystery deepens. Because the most terrifying forces in our cosmos do not announce themselves with sound, heat, or fury. They are completely invisible, completely silent, and they pass straight through solid walls. To understand the true danger of Mars, we have to look far beyond the solar system. We have to look across thousands of light years of interstellar space to the cataclysmic deaths of giant stars. When a massive star runs out of nuclear fuel, its core collapses and it explodes in a brilliant, violent burst of energy known as a supernova. In those incomprehensibly energetic detonations, atomic nuclei, stripped completely bare of their electrons, are hurled across the cosmos at nearly the speed of light. These are not ordinary particles. These are galactic cosmic rays. Heavy iron nuclei, carbon nuclei, and protons carrying so much kinetic energy that they punch through empty space like microscopic freight trains. On Earth, we never have to think about them. Our planet gives us two magnificent layers of defense. First, our global magnetic field bends and deflects the incoming charged particles. Second, our dense atmosphere, containing roughly 10 tons of air pressing down on every single square meter of the surface, acts as an immense physical blanket. By the time a cosmic ray reaches the upper atmosphere, it collides with nitrogen and oxygen molecules, breaking apart into harmless secondary showers before it can ever touch your skin. On Mars, you have neither of these shields. There is no global magnetic field to bend their trajectories, and the atmosphere is so gossamer thin that cosmic rays slam directly into the dirt at full velocity. Now you might think, why not simply build our habitats with thick metal walls? Why not make our spacecraft out of heavy steel or aluminum to block them out? This is where the physics presents an agonizing paradox. When an ultra-high energy cosmic ray, moving at 99% of the speed of light, strikes a heavy atom like lead, aluminum, or iron, it does not simply stop. The incoming particle shatters the atomic nucleus of the shield itself. This violent fragmentation unleashes a cascade of secondary radiation. A spray of high-speed neutrons, gamma rays, and shattered subatomic shrapnel that scatters in every direction. In other words, by putting up a heavy metal barrier, you can actually make the radiation environment inside the habitat far worse than it was outside. The shield itself becomes a weapon. And when these particles enter a human body, they do not cause a simple burn. They tear through living tissue at the molecular level. A single heavy iron ion traveling at relativistic speeds will slice clean through cellular membranes. They rip apart the chemical bonds holding your DNA double helix together and leave a microscopic trail of destroyed matter in its wake. Your cells can repair minor damage from everyday sunlight or low-level background radiation, but they cannot repair the cellular devastation caused by cosmic shrapnel. Over weeks and months, this unceasing subatomic bombardment causes cognitive decline, destroys brain tissue, mutates genes, and steadily dismantles the cardiovascular system. If you lived in one of those romantic glass domes you see in modern architectural concepts, you would be absorbing a continuous toxic dosage of deep space radiation. Within a matter of years, the cellular machinery that keeps you alive would simply begin to fail. The physics tells us that to live on Mars, you cannot live in a gleaming city on the surface. You would be forced to retreat deep underground beneath meters of dense Martian soil, living your entire life buried in perpetual darkness like a subterranean mole. And that is just the beginning of the trap, because as we look even deeper into the soil itself, we discover that the ground beneath our feet is laced with an invisible chemical poison that makes the land itself inherently hostile to all known biology. Let us confront what I call the grand Martian paradox. The proponents of colonization will tell you that we do not need to stay underground forever. They tell us that humanity possesses the engineering prowess to transform the entire planet. We will terraform Mars. We will melt the polar ice caps, release vast reservoirs of trapped carbon dioxide, thicken the atmosphere, warm the surface, and engineer an entirely new biosphere. It is a breathtaking vision of human agency. But when we apply the fundamental principles of thermodynamics and planetary chemistry, we run headfirst into a wall of immutable physical law. The first part of this paradox lies in the soil beneath our feet. In every story of colonization, the first thing human beings must do to survive is grow food. We imagine greenhouses turning the rusty Martian dirt into lush agricultural fields. Yet when our robotic explorers analyzed the chemical composition of the Martian regolith, they found something deeply troubling. The surface of Mars is saturated with industrial concentrations of chemicals called perchlorates. To a chemist, perchlorates are powerful, aggressive oxidizers. On Earth, we use them as key ingredients in solid rocket fuel and industrial fireworks. On Mars, they are naturally generated by ultraviolet radiation, striking the soil in the absence of a protective ozone layer. These compounds are not just slightly toxic. They are deeply destructive to biological life. In humans, perchlorates disrupt the thyroid gland, destroy metabolic function, and cause catastrophic organ failure. Furthermore, the Martian dust is not smooth like beach sand, because there is no liquid water or wind erosion to round the edges of the particles. The dust consists of jagged, microscopic glass-like shards that carry a static electrical charge. This toxic microscopic razor dust clings to spacesuits, enters airlocks, and infiltrates every seal and mechanical joint. To grow a single potato on Mars, you would first have to wash and chemically purify every single kilogram of soil using immense amounts of water that the planet simply does not have. This brings us to the deeper thermodynamic paradox. The fantasy of terraforming. The common proposal suggests that if we vaporize the frozen carbon dioxide at the Martian poles using orbital mirrors or thermonuclear detonations, we can trigger a runaway greenhouse effect. The released carbon dioxide warms the planet, which melts more carbon dioxide, which warms the planet even more, until a thick, warm atmosphere blankets the world. It sounds elegant on paper, but physics requires us to balance the cosmic ledger. We must ask a very basic question. How much carbon dioxide is actually there? When we map the planetary inventory of Mars, the data is unequivocal. If you were to vaporize every single molecule of carbon dioxide locked in the polar ice caps, every particle absorbed into the regolith, and every scrap trapped within carbonate minerals across the entire globe, the total pressure you could generate is less than 1/50th of Earth's atmospheric pressure. The raw material simply does not exist. Mars does not have the volatile carbon inventory to warm itself. The atmosphere is not just asleep, waiting to be awakened. It has been stripped away and lost to deep space over billions of years. You cannot bake a cake if you do not have the flour, no matter how hot you turn up the oven. And even if you could magically conjure 1 trillion tons of air out of the quantum vacuum, you face the most unyielding constraint of all: gravity. Mars has only 38% of the surface gravity of Earth. That number is not an engineering parameter that we can adjust with human ingenuity. It is a fixed cosmological constant determined entirely by the mass and radius of the planet. Every breath of air in our Earth's atmosphere is tethered to our world by the specific gravitational pull of our 6 sextillion-ton planet. The thermal velocity of gas molecules means they are constantly moving, bumping into one another, trying to escape. Earth's gravity holds them tight. Mars's weak gravitational pull cannot hold on to life-sustaining gases over any meaningful span of time. The paradox becomes undeniable. The dream of making Mars into a second Earth requires us to break the fundamental laws of conservation of mass, planetary thermodynamics, and gravitational physics. We are trying to impose our terrestrial biology onto a world that has spent 4 billion years actively rejecting it. I want you to sit back for a moment and really focus on something you have felt every second since you were born, but have probably never truly noticed. Feel your own weight. Feel the pressure of the chair beneath you, the heaviness in your shoulders, the way your feet press into the floor. As we grow older, we often think of gravity as an adversary. It is the invisible force that wears out our joints, sags our skin, and makes climbing a steep flight of stairs feel like a monumental chore. We imagine that floating away to a world with less gravity, like Mars, would be a tremendous relief. We picture it as a kind of fountain of youth, where we could leap gracefully and carry heavy loads with ease. But as a physicist, I need to completely shatter that way of thinking for you. Gravity is not just an external anchor holding your boots to the ground. Gravity is an invisible biological language. It is the master architect of your entire physical body. Let me explain exactly how this works. Think of a magnificent, ancient stone archway. What holds those massive blocks of stone together? It is not mortar and it is not glue. It is the immense downward crushing weight of gravity itself, pressing the stones against one another into a perfect, rigid state of compression. 3. If you were to magically remove that downward weight, the arch would lose all of its structural integrity. A gentle push would cause the entire ancient structure to collapse into dust. Your body operates on that exact same principle. We did not merely evolve on Earth. We evolved through Earth. For nearly 4 billion years, every single organism in your ancestral lineage was sculpted by the exact gravitational pull of a 6 sextillion-ton sphere of rock deep inside your bones. Right this very second, there are microscopic cells whose entire job is to tear down old micro-fractured bone and build new strong bone. But how do these microscopic builders know where to reinforce the structure? 3. They use a remarkable mechanism where physical pressure is translated directly into chemical signals. When you walk or run, the downward force of Earth's gravity squeezes your skeleton. 3. The cells feel that mechanical squeeze. That pressure is the biological command that tells them to build. Now we travel back to Mars. You are standing on the rust-colored dirt, experiencing 38% of Earth's gravity. It feels incredibly fun at first. You feel impossibly light, but deep inside your tissues, a silent catastrophe is unfolding. 3. Because the gravitational squeeze has been reduced by nearly 2/3, those bone-building cells go completely quiet. The biological language has been silenced. Your body, which is a master of thermodynamic efficiency, assumes you no longer need a heavy, dense skeleton. Almost immediately, your bones begin to dissolve. The calcium is flushed into your bloodstream. 3. Your muscles, which no longer have to fight to keep you upright against Earth's heavy pull, begin to rapidly waste away. Your heart is a powerful, muscular pump specifically engineered to push blood vertically up to your brain against the relentless downward pull of Earth. On Mars, that pump becomes lazy and weak, much like an engine that is suddenly left running in neutral. But the deterioration of an adult body is only a prelude. 3. The true break your brain moment comes when we ask the most fundamental question of colonization. What happens when we try to create the next generation? 3. What happens to a developing human embryo in 38% gravity? In the very first days of life, when a fertilized egg begins to divide, the delicate, fluid-filled machinery of the cell relies on a predictable, constant downward vector of gravity to organize its own internal geography. The fluids inside the mother's womb create the intricate formation of the inner ear, which controls our balance, the very architecture of the fetal cardiovascular system. All of it is perfectly tuned to the specific mass of planet Earth. If you alter that cosmological constant, the entire biological symphony falls out of tune. The brutal truth of physics and biology is that a child gestated and born in the fractional gravity of Mars might not develop normally. And even if they did survive, their bones and heart would be so fragile that they could never, ever visit Earth. The gravity of their ancestral home would simply crush them. We are not just residents of Earth. We are physical extensions of its exact mass. You cannot simply pack up an organism built by the physics of one planet and expect it to survive the mathematics of another. We have romanticized the concept of the frontier. When we think of Mars, we project our own human history onto its barren surface. We imagine the pioneers of past centuries sailing across vast oceans to find a new world, a fresh start, and a place where they could build a society based on ultimate freedom and self-determination. But as a physicist, I must bring you back to the brutal reality of the universe. The laws of physics do not care about human narratives or our desire for exploration. And the hard truth is that Mars will never be a frontier of freedom. it will be the most unforgiving, hyper-controlled environment ever designed by human hands. 3. Let us look at the concept of freedom through the absolute laws of thermodynamics. Here on Earth, freedom is granted to us for free by the biosphere. You can walk out of your front door free, take a deep breath, and you do not owe anyone a single cent for the oxygen entering your lungs. You do not have to worry about the atmospheric scrubbers failing in the night. Our planet is a massive, open thermodynamic engine. The energy from our sun continuously drives weather patterns, ocean currents, and plant growth very naturally, recycling our air and water on a scale so vast that we can afford to be completely oblivious to it. A Martian colony is the exact opposite. It is an artificial, closed thermodynamic system. And the most terrifying law in all of physics, the second law of thermodynamics, dictates that in any closed system, entropy or disorder will always increase. What does that mean for our brave colonists? It means everything degrades. Every single machine, every air filter, every rubber seal, and every water pump is constantly moving toward failure. On Mars, you are not living in nature. You are living inside a machine. You are a biological component trapped inside a mechanical lung. Imagine the reality of your daily existence. Every drop of water you drink is mechanically recycled from the sweat, the moisture in the breath, and the urine of everyone else in the habitat. Every breath of oxygen is artificially stripped from carbon dioxide by energy-intensive chemical processors. To power these life support systems, you cannot simply rely on solar panels. The sunlight on Mars is incredibly weak, and the planet is plagued by global dust storms that can blot out the sun for months at a time. Therefore, your entire existence relies on a localized nuclear reactor functioning perfectly forever, without the vast manufacturing supply chains of Earth to provide replacement parts. If the power grid flickers, if a fan motor burns out, or if a microscopic crack develops in the outer seal, the clock starts ticking toward asphyxiation. When your very survival depends entirely on a flawless, continuous supply of electricity and perfectly maintained plumbing, freedom becomes a physical impossibility. Think about the classic American road trip. You get in a car, you drive in any direction, and if the car breaks down, you roll down the window and wait for help. You are safe. If your rover breaks down 100 miles from the Martian base, you do not just have a mechanical problem. You have a lethal countdown. The freezing vacuum and the radiation are waiting just outside the thin metal walls. You cannot step outside to walk back. You are a prisoner of the engineering. Because the margin for error is absolute zero, the social structure of a Martian colony could never be a democracy. It would have to be operated like a military submarine in the deepest trenches of the ocean, or an intensive care unit where the patients are also the mechanics. Every action, every resource, every moment of your day would be strictly monitored and rationed. You could not simply decide to have a child. The life support mathematics would not allow for an unplanned consumer of oxygen and water. You would never again feel the wind on your skin. You would never feel the warmth of the sun without thick layers of radiation shielding glass. The hard truth is that a Martian colony is not a backup drive for humanity. It is a planetary scale life support ward. We are talking about abandoning a paradise that took 4 billion years to perfectly adapt to our biology, only to live in a dark radioactive bunker millions of miles away. Constantly terrified that a single broken valve will kill everyone you love. And this brings us to the final, inescapable conclusion about our place in the cosmos. Let us take a moment to pull back. I want you to imagine zooming out, far beyond the orbit of Mars, far beyond the freezing rings of Saturn, until you are looking at the entire inner solar system, from the cold depths of deep space. From that breathtaking vantage point, you see the uncompromising truth of our celestial neighborhood. Venus is a toxic, crushing inferno. Mars is a frozen, radioactive corpse of a world. And then there is us, a tiny, fragile sphere of blue and white, perfectly suspended in the dark. For decades, the narrative of Mars colonization has been sold to us as an ultimate insurance policy for the human race. The logic seems comforting. If we make a catastrophic mistake here on Earth, if we ruin our climate, or if an asteroid strikes, we will have a backup drive for humanity safely established on the red planet. But I am telling you, as a physicist who studies the immutable laws of nature, that this narrative is not just scientifically flawed, it is a profoundly dangerous psychological escape hatch. It is a distraction from the reality of our cosmic situation. The ultimate lie of Mars colonization is the implication that Earth is disposable. It implies that a planet is just a piece of hardware and that we can simply swap it out for a new one when the old one breaks or becomes uncomfortable. But Earth is not just a rock. It is a hyper-complex, self-regulating, 4-billion-year-old biological engine. It is a thermodynamic masterpiece that we do not yet fully understand, let alone have the ability to replicate. Think about the absolute absurdity of the comparison. Even if we destroy our ozone layer, even if we melt every single glacier and raise the oceans, even if we drastically alter our atmosphere with carbon, a ruined post-apocalyptic Earth would still be infinitely more habitable than Mars on its absolute best day. A devastated Earth would still have a roaring magnetic shield to protect our DNA from the galaxy. A devastated Earth would still have exactly 1 unit of gravity perfectly tuned to keep your heart beating and your bones intact. A devastated Earth would still have the atmospheric pressure required to keep the water in your cells from violently boiling away into the vacuum of space. Fixing our own world, no matter how politically or technologically daunting it may seem, is millions of times easier from a purely physical perspective than trying to spark a dead, toxic planet back to life. We do not have a backup planet. The mathematics of reality simply do not allow it. Uncovering these truths, peeling back the layers of clever marketing and science fiction to reveal the stark, very beautiful, and sometimes terrifying reality of the universe is exactly what we do here. I do not want to give you comfortable illusions. I want to give you the universe exactly as it is, governed by profound laws that demand our ultimate respect. If this journey into the physics of reality has changed the way you look at the stars and the way you look at the ground beneath your feet, I ask you to support this work directly. Just below this video, you will see the Super Thanks button. We do not have the multi-billion-dollar public relations budgets of the commercial space industry. We rely entirely on you. The thinkers, the curious minds, the people who are not afraid to face the hard scientific truths of our cosmos. By using the Super Thanks feature, you directly fuel our ability to keep exploring, to keep breaking down the complex physics, and to keep bringing you into the deepest mysteries of the universe. Your support allows us to continue this vital conversation. We must